What
The
a nice
transition
intro.
becomes better.
We're
It does.
getting better at the intros. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Adrian. It's good to see you.
Likewise. Hello, Dennis.
So, how many juniors did you replace with AI this week?
Oh, so many. They're all replaced,
So you're down
including
to 0
myself.
now? Are you down to 0 juniors?
Actually, yes.
How
But
many did you?
not because of AI.
So, topic for today is a mix between mentorships and AI usage and how that really affects our ecosystem with regards to how we're training people and what we're training them on. I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was this huge craze about in what IDE to do engineering, because we didn't really have an equivalent of VS Code. So what we had was very good text editors and IDEs for certain languages. I grew up in an era where PHP didn't have an IDE.
NetBeans and these kind of IDEs, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they didn't have full support, right? So there were a lot of IDEs for C and C++ and Java. And then we like JavaScript didn't have an IDE for the longest time. So there was this divide in tooling. If you're a Java engineer, you're using an IDE. And if you're a front-end engineer, you're using a silly text editor like Sublime.
Notepad, Sublime.
Notepad++, Sublime. Yes. So it wouldn't have any text highlighting.
I still have Sublime as my note editor.
So it's not like NeoVim with an LSP. Like you wouldn't have any language functionality. It would just like pick up random words in random context and just give them to you like a really, really bad LLM. And I saw this, like some form of this come back now with the tooling surrounding AIs and who's using them just in like bare bones mode and who's using them with like, cloning Paul Hammond's TDD skill or TDD guardrails and putting them in. And like some people are doing it locally, some people are putting it into their company project repo, some people are doing something in between. And
but that is a sign of bad tech leadership. In my opinion, it is exactly that.
I think so too.
And this is, I think, one of the main core things I want to talk about today, right? Is like, I'm a leader. I become more and more the typical leadership person, right? So less hands-on tech. So people might see that on my side that I become more philosophical in what I'm actually doing. And the reason for that is I see...
Yeah, you have now evolved to Scrum Master. You are now...
I'm Scrum. I actually should leave the stream and never come back to that one again. Just because of that. No, I don't become my foe. No, it's actually like I get to this side after trying to change my own environment, I changed my own environment, and then others. Or actually, I tried to change others. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't. On some point in time, I saw that I actually don't have control over other environments. That needs to be done by people who are actually in those environments. And then I realized let's say the last 3-4 years, this journey where I faced other tech leaders in a very personal way. So very deep relationships, like talking about everything, the path where you start to accept what's not working, accept your own shortcomings, accept the team's shortcomings, and how to actually get that to the team or get the team to the point that they act like their leader. So many things about that. And no matter what we tried with TDD, continuous delivery, how to actually work correctly with modern frameworks like Next.js, it all came down that we cannot proceed as long as we have this mindset issue, right? So that everyone thinks they have the right thing and they're just in a protective mode. And that's the reason why I think the topic of today is so important, because what we actually see is that AI, when we take a look, so round about 1 year ago were the big dawn of AI. We saw that all over the place. I made my videos about that on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and it was polarizing for the people. So there was so much defensive stuff, people complaining it was not deterministic enough, hallucinations. So many people were against that, and so many people were for it. So it was like, there were even people like, I'm doing a vibe coding thing now, right? So doing my own business, entire business, just with vibe coding, lovable, even code used for that. And then that settles a bit. So we had then the storm was settling. So people were calming down, saying, okay, the meteor is not hitting Earth, it's just passing it, but we still need to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other meteors, and the other meteor. Okay, how do we actually integrate AI into a company context? And suddenly you see more and more CTOs and CIOs and others, CAIOs talking about how to integrate that stuff into the let's say the actual environment, because
And whether you should.
whether you should, right? And
Yeah.
then we had these discussions, which one of the titles we had or have today, or in a streaming title, is the junior part. So people saying, so yeah, developers will be replaced. That was then corrected to juniors will be replaced, which is more likely than actually seniors, because we saw that seniors are still necessary. But wait, how do we actually get in a company environment to new seniors in the future? Because seniors are not just, happen because people doing something in their own basement. Seniors grow because they're in deliberate hours in work, right? Yeah, it is like that. And so if we don't focus on juniors anymore to actually take care for the own offspring, and the fresh blood is not coming in anymore, because we don't need you, we just take a look for seniors. What will we do in 2 or 3 years when there are actually no new seniors there who can do that? And that is something where leaders, tech leaders, starting from the C level, even the CEO level, right? So the head of executive should think of, because there is nothing of an easy thing right now. I think it was never before that hard as a junior developer to get into a role, even though AI is actually helping you to onboard you. It is actually helping you to boost you. But people perceive it like a junior cannot handle AI, so a junior cannot create features. And if a junior cannot create features, I don't want to. I don't want to have a junior anymore. I want to have a person who can.
I think that's also a perception thing. For example, if we talk about juniors purely from a recruitment context, we fall into this trap of, well, a junior using AI is good if like there is a baseline. So 20 years ago, if I asked you a lead code question, I would have preferred that you solve it with me rather than Googling it and copy pasting a solution from Stack Overflow. Like, there was just some implicit agreement that us solving it together would be preferable to you choosing a Stack Overflow solution, right? That rather than Googling on your machine and looking for a solution that you can copy paste, that we would invest the time to check how you would do it without any sort of external help. There's that element. We now have a tool that is so pervasive that it is very good at this kind of external help. But it's not super smart. It's just a lot smarter English-speaking Google that has been trained on Stack Overflow-like questions. And it is very good at answering stuff that naturally happens on interviews. So if you then use this tool and the interview format doesn't adapt to this new tooling existing in the ecosystem, there will be a period where people who do use the tool and don't get caught appear smarter. People who are very smart might be discriminated against for using the tool, despite the tool not giving them a huge advantage. And people who are not very smart and the tool could actually help them land a gig that would help them become much more competent, they get filtered out because they rely on the tool so much, which is all just very much irrational angst with regards to what are we even testing for. So the junior question is complicated. Like just that element of recruitment is complicated. I don't have a solution for it, right? Because it ultimately comes down to trust and what it's like working with this person. And if I'm pairing with you and you shut up and you talk to Claude, I would be very unhappy. So if that's how I'm modeling the interview, I would like you to talk to me, the other human, more, and sort of candidly try to like build a relationship here, even if it's just role play for the sake of the interview. I would prefer that over you using Cloud Code. I don't mind you using Cloud Code. I don't mind you talking to him. What I mind is you talking to a machine and trying to solve the problem so intently that I don't get to learn what it's like working with you. I only get to know what it's like looking at your Cloud Codes, your system prompts output, which is not super valuable.
Yeah, it fosters isolation, actually.
It fosters isolation, yes, which is now bringing us back to this topic of.
I think that's one of the issues that you can work with AI in a way that you were working in pair programming with other humans. It's not the same, but it is comparable. And so especially it is not human, but there are people preferring to not work with humans. We have that already. So when we take a look at LinkedIn or other feeds, when people discuss pair programming, so many people are opposed to pair programming at all. Right? People disturb me. I need to have deep focus. These kind of things.
I don't think people are opposed to pair programming. I think people are opposed to pairing with people they don't like.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. That's not the same thing, right? Like if you would naturally be resistant to the idea of pairing with somebody,
if you don't like someone on your team, it is the same result. Actually.
Yeah. Right. But
another problem.
But that's important. That's important because if I say pairing is important, I'm expecting you to pair even with the people you don't like. Because that is then the vehicle through which we figure out, can you two work together on a team? Like, is there hope? Or do we split you up? And that's okay. Like we move one of you to a different team and see if, we roll the dice and we do another chemistry check with somebody else. I'm okay with that. What I'm opposed with is when people say, everybody around me, everybody are assholes, and I only want to work alone, right? Even when somebody new comes in that you don't know, you say, I prefer to work alone. I prefer to work alone as an absolute, without having tried to working with other people. And that's okay. If that is something that we can negotiate, like what does that mean? Do you cancel all meetings? Like, do I need to call a meeting to work with you? Like, if I call an 8-hour meeting with you, will you play along, right? Like, because there is always a way to sneak around this kind of isolation. Like, if I call a long meeting, where you, like, does that work for us? Are you compatible with ensembles? What does it look like when you go to a conference for 2 hours, like in the same city? You go to you go and give a presentation. Will you be out of commission for the entire day because I broke apart your isolation bubble? Or will you be able to ensemble with the team, go to the presentation, come back and ensemble with another team? Like, it's like, how dynamic are you? I think these qualities are really important in people, and everybody's different. But I wouldn't put loners in the introverted camp. I wouldn't assume that somebody who's making an excuse about their environment is inherently an introvert and cannot possibly work with other people, or will not by default.
I'm opposed anyway to the idea that introverts cannot work with other people, right? I'm an introvert.
I have a question by Emmanuel. Emmanuel posted a link. What do you think about this? And he posted
on Substack.
Yeah, on my Substack, posthug.com, he said, newsletter collaboration sucks. So that is a blog post by Posthug. I will post it here in. I can't post it. Can you post it? I will dump it in private chat.
Give me a second, please.
So it's a Emmanuel, off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to. It's a very short article that I would have to check this out. I don't have an opinion on this article just now, but we can discuss it afterwards. Adrian has to leave 5 minutes to 5, so if I can squeeze in a little bit more time solo, then I'll read the article with you, Emmanuel, and then give my
Oh my
share my
God.
thoughts.
Sorry, I'm now it's working.
But thank you for the link.
Yeah, there's never mind. We'll do that.
Hey,
So
Colin.
there's a QR code above there as well. So there's a restream. Oh, really? Come on, that's okay.
So the QR code
The
above your
QR
head.
code is there. That's your only chance. That's
Okay,
how it works right now.
okay.
It doesn't work for me here.
Oh yeah, because you can't select it to. You put the studio link in on YouTube.
I know that's the reason why we put it away right now.
Okay. Is anybody?
I'm still sick. It's
okay.
fair.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Is that a permanent studio link?
No.
Okay. A problem for another time. So, where were we? Yeah, pairing, loners, etc. So you mentioned that using LLMs for work or for coding in general can bring upon isolation, like a tendency to isolate instead of to work alone, since now you have like this anthropomorphized tool that you can sort of treat like a pairing partner, but not really. Like it's more like a lap dog that you're bossing around. Like I expect my pairing partner to like navigate, which means I expect my pairing partner to tell me what to do, and an AI will never do that, right? So the relationship imbalance. I mean, it's not even a relationship. It's just the communication that you perceive of having with an LLM will never have exactly the same candidness and cadence as with another human being. So I wouldn't even open up that can of worms of doing it justice by equalizing the comparison frame.
Mm-hmm. The question is, I don't think it's so much about AI in that regards. It is about what's going on in our team if people don't want to work together. That's the first question. So what is the culture? We often spoke about that. What is the culture anyway? So is it something where everyone is like that's normal that we work together, and let's just integrate AI as something we use? Then we have decided that we use Claude or whatever we use, right?
That's spot on. Yeah,
exactly. That's it, right? And we continue working together anyway. That is for me a sign for a mature team, a sign for good leadership, that this is actually something which is preferred. That is the, let's say, the cultural requirement we have here. If we now have an environment where we try to create new teams, in quotes, where people, let's say, intermediate developers who are not seniors yet, but they can use AI, will basically be used to produce a lot of features in isolation. I see a huge problem with that, because that is definitely an environment of low quality. So many people pushing out many new features and changes which aren't really like based on knowledge sharing.
Agreed.
Because when you cannot work together, you will not work together. That's one of the problems, right? So you need to learn to work together by practice.
I mean, I would even emphasize the inverse, right? Like you will not learn how to collaborate together well if you avoid collaboration.
It is what I mean. Yeah, okay.
If you're saying, "Oh, we don't get along, we shouldn't be pairing because we don't know how to pair effectively," you will never learn that. So it'll always be an issue. But the skill cannot be learned in like without pairing. Like it's like I'm trying to teach you how to drive a car, and you're like, okay, but I don't want to sit in a car until I know how to drive it. Right? But like you do a test so that you know just enough to not endanger somebody, and then we teach you how to drive inside a vehicle. And the assumption is that you will learn how to do so in under 20 hours. And that is the only learning you will do for the rest of your life. And I can assure you, collaboration is simpler
There
than
are
driving a
countries
car.
on this planet where you can get a driver license like this.
Hey. So I don't wanna dig too deep on that down that rabbit hole. But my point is that collaboration, about how to collaborate with my team, how to collaborate inside my organization, is a skill that you have to build.
Yeah.
And if your excuse for not collaborating is that we're just not good at it, that's a rough attitude, right? Because that is already defeatist. Like, that mindset already says, you know, I don't care about my team enough to even try to figure this out. Because ultimately this comes down to, and we're talking about pairing, right? Because in the context of AIs, you get the two main friction points, which is if you're not pairing, then you're working alone, which means that there's now a human who has to review code that you didn't write, which is kind of pointless, because the code is meant for your human skills to become better. Right? So right? So if your code was AI generated, I need to know which part was AI generated and which part was done by Claude, so that on the Claude part, I'm giving you prompt hints. I'm giving you a review on what the prompt Claude and what would have gone differently. And on the human side, I'm actually giving you advice on like how to learn. And that's really complicated, because then I need to review the pull request in two different modes. And the mode where I'm wasting much more of my time has more lines of code, right? So the mode where you learn less has more lines of code, just because of the sheer batch size that the LLMs are capable of, right? That's the first friction point. The second friction point is that it's possible to code in such a way that you can get something basic done, but then you don't know how to maintain it. You don't know how to incorporate its architecture into something that makes sense long term. You just know how to, like, you know, get 20%, 40% of the task done, and then you start floating, right? And then you're not quite sure how to get there. You keep prompting. Like, once you come to a stage where you don't know how to proceed, if the LLM has pushed you beyond your level of skill, you will be stuck there.
Yeah.
Which is a huge problem if you're then the leader of that team and you have to tell your team, hey, okay, went too deep down the rabbit hole, revert all the branches, let's start from scratch to build up the knowledge that we skipped building. Because sometimes you will have to learn something you don't know, using a library you don't know, and you think that, okay, using the LLM helps me not read the documentation. And then you go down further until a point where now you need to understand something much more complex that is difficult to understand if you didn't read the documentation.
I think it's when we think longer about that, it is, I think, one of the most complicated challenges we faced in tech leadership for a while, is that this AI is, I think that was the initial defensive reaction. It is not good enough. We don't need it, because if we don't integrate it, right, then we don't need to have this challenge and this change. So it turns out that the AI isn't that bad. So it is good enough to actually do what it's supposed to do, but it's not good enough to replace anyone, which means that it only works as a tool for a human. That's how it is.
Oh yeah, no. So I wouldn't give that argument a lot of weight, because replacing implies that there is a world in which we go from 10 employees to 0. And that doesn't make sense, because the AI still needs to be used by somebody.
But it is still in the heads of the people.
But that's my point. Like, it doesn't make sense to go down to 0, because there will always be one person who then becomes the engineer running the agents, and you cannot go to 0. Like, so it's not replacement; it's something else.
Okay, now I got you what you mean. Yeah.
Which means that we're not going from 10 to 0. We're sort of calculating, can we go from 10 to 7 and get the same amount of work done? Now,
This is what actually happens in some companies. That is
yes,
not
but
a
let me
fever
cook.
dream
Let
or
me
something
cook.
like
Let
that.
me cook. Let me
Yeah.
cook. It's possible. It's completely plausible that your team, for whatever reason, is so dysfunctional that going from 10 to 7 without AI usage is also a boost in productivity. That's what a lot of people miss. A lot of organizations grow too quickly and grow too quickly in the junior heavy side. So maybe there is a world where they would be more productive if they made the organization simpler, the shape of the communication channels simpler. Maybe there's people who don't get along. Maybe there's people who need too much management. Maybe you have 2 juniors, 3 mid-levels, and 1 staff engineer, and there's nobody in that sort of tech lead or middle management position that would be able to translate the needs of the engineers with the
Yeah,
sort
there's
of
no leader actually. There's
there's no
individual
leader. There's just
ICs a lot.
somebody
Yeah.
very smart, somebody very confused, and somebody very inexperienced. And then the project manager is basically playing Scrum Master 5000 and trying to push stuff around Jira.
There's
Right?
always
Like,
this person who's very
right?
confused all the time.
Right.
What's going on?
So when we're
Uh,
saying AI is replacing juniors, we have to work with the reality that just to replace just replacing people would have been, that was the whole point of like founder mode and sort of Elon cutting, I don't know, 80% of Twitter, and the whole craze after COVID where companies were having this like big tech companies having this existential angst about, yeah, maybe we do have too much middle management, or maybe we shouldn't have non-engineering engineering managers, like maybe we shouldn't have non-IC management roles to this degree, right? So, and you got these complaints from places like from Amazon, from Microsoft. Twitter, I think, is the most public example. But it's like pervasive across the entire industry that there was this sense of, yeah, do we need so much management? Like maybe we could get more stuff done with just less people without AI. Like not even talking about AI, right? So when we're talking about going to less people and being more productive, I think there's also, we shouldn't attribute the benefits of that immediately to AI, because if AI makes 10, if you go from 10 to 7 with AI, that means that now 7 people do the work of 10. But if that works across the board, why didn't you just keep the 10 people and give them all AI? Like, wouldn't you have 14? Right? Like, is that not profitable for your business? Right? Because maybe it's not valuable. Maybe it's just a weird form of cost cutting, or maybe the cost cutting was necessary either way, and you're just looking for an excuse.
I think I'm pretty sure the truth is in between. So
yeah.
You would, let's say, overstretch what the actual seniors need to do when you would just take away people, because there's not a thing like you have 3 people doing nothing and you just reduce them and all is fine. So you need to, they all do something, and this something needs to be done or compensated by the others. And there is, I think, where AI is actually a good key for that. So you and to some degree it's to some degree. So since when you use AI correctly, I'm only referring to Cloud Code now because I never saw another LLM agent combination which actually
let's stick to tools that we know and we use.
Exactly. So Cloud Code is capable enough in a typical JavaScript environment, for example, to actually boost a senior developer who's actually really knowing what he or she is doing, right?
And familiar with the code base and is not scared
practicing,
to look under the
good
hood
practices.
of code.
Exactly. These kind of things. Testing is very important.
And go deep, like token optimization, getting better at prompt engineering.
Exactly. So exactly,
take it seriously,
you have an expectation
like
before you actually prompt and these kind of things, right?
Yes.
And that really boosts you. It's not like a 10x thing nonsense. Talking about a boost of several percent. So somewhere, something in my mind now. So it's
we don't need to quantify it. We can
Exactly.
qualitatively say that at least for that engineer, there is a palpable difference in speed. Now, usually,
absolutely noticeable difference,
Yes.
which relieves stress from that person.
so it's qualitative. It's
Exactly.
stress relief. It's easier to have like that tabula rasa moment where I have to build something new and I hate staring at the empty file where I'm looking for a template
so many
that doesn't
blockers are
exist.
away, right?
Yes, like it just like those micro unblockings that LLMs are really good at, because there is an element of templating whenever you're building something new, or whenever you're augmenting something or refactoring something.
Or documenting something. AI is so great in documentation.
Or summarizing, right? AI is amazing for compression, right? Where you have a large document and you have to summarize it. It's amazing at that. Like my general critique is that it is not very reliable for expansion, right? Where you have a simple prompt and you expect it to build something very large, and you find it difficult to express which nuances are important to you, right? So you tell it, hey, create me a fun children's story, and you didn't really define where you wanted to go and what you consider fun or what you would be happy with. And then it generates something and it takes a very long time, and then you read it and you don't like it. Like that's how most people that I know, that I observed or critiqued for their inefficient usage of AIs, that's how they expect vibe coding to happen. It's like, oh, I have this ticket, solve it. And then it's like, oh.
But let's quickly revert to the point that a senior developer can become more effective, significantly more effective. Before, so we're with the example of 10 to 7 developers per team. So when people tend to, we cut off the most ineffective 3 developers of a 10-person team, that's what actually happens. And the seniors and the other developers of the team can compensate that with AI. And then this is, in theory, actually a bargain for the company. So you have less, because AI agents are actually no money in comparison to a salary. In a
it depends on how, I've seen heavy usage. Like
you don't really get above $500 a month. In the Western world, it is not even a quarter of a salary.
Look, I can't share a lot of details here, but let's just say I saw a lot of unexpectedly high AI bills.
Yeah, for coding.
Yes.
Okay, but that's maybe then a little bit of incompetence there, because
yes, of course, but like that's
also
not
normal.
No, but we have to count that in. Like we can't expect, like if we have created a scenario where we look for competence and incompetence in our team to fire them and replace them with AI, there is also going to be people who don't know how to use AIs. So, right? So there will be now. Luckily, it's only the most skilled people that I've seen that will like spin up a giant agent cluster and like run 10 agents or 20 agents with MCP servers and code that way. Very few people, which is a good thing. Because
I wouldn't try to do that. In my opinion, the best thing is that you have one thing in front of you and you finish this one thing in a good quality.
Yes, but not everybody uses AIs like you do, and I've seen examples where it can become, did you watch Anti-Gravity, like the new Google launch that they did yesterday? That's what they launched. Right, an agent management fleet where you basically manage a fleet of agents to rival things like Cloud Code's agent mode and GitHub's agent mode and like that, the Copilot agent mode that runs behind the scenes on GitHub projects. That's sort of where people want to drive it, right? So you sort of just have like trigger points and code reviews in between the agents, and the agents oversee each other. And there's a project management agent and a coding agent and a backend agent and a front-end agent, and you just run, I don't know, 10 or 20 agents in parallel in a fleet.
But don't tell me that no matter which heavy form of ADHD you might have, you won't be able to follow all of those.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
But it can still be a silly experiment that can be very expensive. Or you learn how to optimize it, and then the cloud provider pulls the rug under your feet and increases the monthly costs of the AI or the token spending, or decreases the amount of tokens you have, and it forces you into a bigger price bracket that.
And it forces you into debt.
Yeah, it forces you into enterprise pricing, where even though you don't use it a lot, you will have to pay per seat, and the tokens become more expensive per seat or something silly like that, like they do a full Salesforce on you. And that's then how your costs get out of control. Again,
I'm
that's
still a big fan of that. You as a developer should be able to still develop by hand in case of, because outages are very often. You can't send everyone home just because of an AWS outage or Cloudflare.
So where this comes with, let's say, responsibility for training your team, really we have, we mentioned extreme programming in the agenda today. By the way, are there any questions in your Substack? Do you have it open by any chance?
Yeah, I have it open, but there are no questions. Hello,
Okay.
Substack. You are allowed to ask questions.
Yeah. I have 13,
statements.
14 people on Substack. So Substack crew, I'm watching. If you have any questions, please drop them. Emmanuel, I saw your link. I will review it once Adrian has to leave.
I'm the roadblock.
No, but like I want to be conscious of your time. I don't want to read an article while you're a little bit pressed on time. So it comes back to this idea of pairing, collaboration, right? I think pairing and collaboration in most teams comes down to 3 main rituals. The ritual of product management theater.
Mhm.
So what does the project planning, estimations, Scrum, not Scrum, stakeholder review, what does that look like? Like any company that has more than 3 people will have something like that. And maybe it's an ongoing ensemble and it's super freeform, but you will have something. That's one ritual, right? Like how does the business interface with engineering? That exists in some form in your company. Then there's the merge theater. How do 2 engineers interface with each other? So are they reviewing each other's code? Are they working in parallel on 2 different things? Are they working in parallel on the same thing, but on a slightly different subset, right? So is there like a division of work? Is there a division of the entire engineering plan? Or is there an entirely separate, agency style product division where 2 people are never working on the same product at the same time?
To be honest, I think there is a bad tendency right now in the industry, where especially in the, let's say, in the startup world, in the scale-up world,
typically feature factory mentality, where
you have then the idea of
then
you don't need to have code reviews anymore with humans. We can now do it with AI.
Yeah, CodeRabbit notably got a lot of backlash.
So
for
you develop
incentivizing.
alone with AI, you review alone with AI, and AI reviews alone without developers, and just creates tickets in a board.
Yeah, and I even saw. Do you remember we got asked to review CodeRabbit, and I said no, something seems fishy, and I also don't use it, and I don't think I would recommend using it. There was a lot of backlash recently on CodeRabbit. CodeRabbit is an AI review tool. There was a lot of backlash recently. I read a post that talked about this concern that engineers just stopped reading the CodeRabbit reviews, because the CodeRabbit reviews it was just too noisy, and they just marked it as spam. Right, so the robot said, oh, this and that and that and that and that, but there's no human there. There's no relationship there. There's no influence. There's no incentive. So it just gives you this chart and some graphs and some pipeline, and you're like, mark
it's
as
very
spam.
Distracting, to be honest, because
and it's very
it always
distracting.
comes to a time where you actually don't need it.
And the AI doesn't know what it's mentoring you on, right? So it doesn't know what it is you need to learn. It's just giving you like an objective scoring.
You can do it yourself by just asking Cloud Code after or before you're committing, like, review my changes.
And that's exactly what I mean with AI replaces juniors. Of maybe we should teach them how to do that, how to have a conversation of, hey, can you teach me how to do this? Like imagine you're Dave Farley, Kent Beck, etc. She'll like teach me that style of BDD. right? You can have that conversation with Cloud Code, and it'll actually help you find material. It'll help you find conflicting terminology. If you know if you're on the edge of the corpus, if you're on the edge of the curriculum, of the subject matter, you can very easily explore the subject matter without actually knowing. No, so for example, AIs are a very good tool for, hey, what is the socially accepted way of building a UI in Go? In a terminal, for example, and it'll tell you, right? It'll tell you, oh, most people use this and this tool for this and this reason. Alternatives include blah 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 blah. It's a great example of how to use AIs, right? Or for example, you go to AWS and ask, hey, I have an SQS message queue. I have a use case where I don't want to build my consumer in my language because my language builds weird SQS consumers, PHP, for example. How do I flip the relationship? What is the simplest way to trigger a REST call from SQS to my PHP server to invert that relationship? You ask the AI that, and it'll give you some suggestions, and it'll tell you why that's a bad idea, but then it'll give you all relevant links to the documentation. And I think that's a very healthy approach, right?
Yeah, because you are still in the decision-making seat. So
Yes.
you can make a decision for yourself. Is what I was reading right now a good thing or not? If I don't understand what happens there, I am not allowed to implement that. That's the maturity and the ownership part. So I can only implement what I can be responsible and accountable for. And that's one of the reasons why AI is actually boosting seniors on a level where you have exactly those adapter interfaces to other systems.
Agreed.
Right? So for example, that we had this idea of that we started with full stack engineers several years ago, then everything split it up. And I see that often today that front-end seniors and back-end seniors, they don't even dare to take a look into the other code bases anymore.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
And AI helps you to ask the AI to take a look at the backend. So maybe you can already get an idea, not by changing things there, but by asking questions about why is that like this, and you have another basis of communication with your colleagues.
I recall I used to give like architecture advice or design advice to JavaScript to my front-end engineer, like at the very like 2000s, early 2000s, right? Like 20 years ago. And they were like, Dennis, you know front-end? It's like, what do you mean? It's JavaScript. It's a programming language. Like, I know how to code. It's just like it's
you
exactly
are now
the same thing.
HTML programmer. What?
Yeah, or they would tell me, Dennis, you know Flash? What do you mean Flash? It's ActionScript. It's JavaScript. Of course I know this language. Like, I've been using it for 10 years. It's like, what do you mean? I don't know the graphical tooling. Hang on. My mother-in-law's here. I need to open the door, and I'll be right back. I'm conscious that you need to go in 5 minutes as well. I'll just give me a moment.
Yeah, I lost it a little bit. So maybe let's quickly talk about the idea of the leadership aspects, which we can then continue with Dennis, because on some point we need to understand that this is an issue. So of course we now wrapped up the idea of how do we actually, or where's the tendency currently on the market from reducing team sizes and optimizing the people which are there, which is a real tendency, is in reality there. I'm doing that myself. It works. That doesn't really mean that juniors disappear, but let's quickly face that leadership topic about how to integrate juniors. So we now said you can use AI to learn. You can learn about your code base. You can learn about the problem. I ask, before everything, I am a long time in planning mode. That's how it looks like.
Agreed.
Before a big plan isn't there, I don't do anything. And I'm reading these plans carefully, but because I know Cloud Code is very deterministic when it does have a plan like this.
Yep.
Right? Then you don't need to be like, oh, I need to read every line which happens. No, you can make a coffee or plan the next thing, right? But you need to go through this phase. So you need to ask questions first. You need to put the time and money into that the AI is allowed to make the research. And that's the first thing. But I am now a senior with a lot of hours on my bank or in my bank. So what is now with a junior developer who doesn't understand the output of an AI in the way like I do it right now? So there is like
when to
a
trust
gap.
it, when to be a bit more skeptical,
Exactly. And
when to ask it to just stop and restart from a certain checkpoint, or
and how to integrate this in an accepted way into a team and a company. So when we ask now, hey, do we want, or let's say a company, shall we open a junior role who is learning with AI how to do things? And this was the mentality 20 years ago. Totally fine. Apprenticeship,
totally fine.
we can do that, right?
Apprenticeship, etc.
It's totally normal. We need to
totally
do this.
Normal. Yeah.
But today, no, it's not totally normal anymore. People,
there's this implicit expectation that since you have access to ChatGPT, you should teach yourself if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah, the problem with a junior today is a developer who can do simple things in a factory mode.
Yeah.
It is not it is actually the pre-developer stage. It is not that anymore. So we say today.
So I think if you are infantilizing junior engineers as the ideal feature factory person, there is a huge overlap between what they're capable of and what the AIs of even an untrained AI operator would naturally be able to output. Now, the problem is that the junior will learn to grow beyond that through this exercise, and the AI won't. So if you're looking for a short-term win, yeah, sure, like on paper, it makes sense. But if you're looking for a long-term win, you will never train that junior that in 5 years or 10 years could be a senior in your company or some other company. And if everybody else is doing that, then you should expect that there will be a huge senior engineer shortage in 10 years. And you will have to bite the bullet and try to figure out how to teach people to code. And that might not be a future that you're willing to invest into if you're needing that like on the spot. If you're used to.
I mean, we had that already. It's not new. We had that issue that suddenly we need to have developers, and here in Germany, we had that suddenly schools were teaching to become an application developer.
Yeah,
that was
like boot camps.
It became normally a journeyman
we had that
approach.
Whole boot camp era of like 2000.
No, even before that, right?
Yeah.
And I like the idea, and when I take a look at the people who went through this process, they are very good seniors today because they had an environment where learning was good. So there wasn't they wasn't expect like they need to do everything already just because they are able to write something into an IDE, right? Or read basic code. It is like, okay, you know the basics, and we expect you to be here for the next years anyway, and we teach you. And that's one of the other issues is the let's say this idea of, I think that's a problem developers do to themselves, is the idea of I need to prefer job hopping to increase my salary. That led to the
That's an incentive problem. That's an incentive problem.
But that leads to the problem that companies don't really plan with people for long term anymore, which means they are not willing to invest into people long term.
Well, that's another issue. Problem. It's more complicated than it seems. I don't want to. You need to go soonish, so.
But it's one of the more interesting problems.
I know, but next time. And we have this episode now that we've teased out of Brian that we need to have soon. Promise.
Soon. We have some slots free anyway. We haven't a plan for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we can definitely talk with Brian and Paul, and an episode with Paul soon.
We have some questions.
So, okay.
Gentlemen, how's it going? And a hi. And a question. May I ask what kind of technologies do you work with on a day-to-day? I think he's referring, or whatever he is referring to the AI tools in IDE.
Possibly.
I use Cloud Code and Juni from JetBrains, but Juni is only there because it knows GPT-5, and GPT-5 is very good in design.
I know. I use Cloud Code and ChatGPT.
Juni is a helper for Cloud Code.
The teams that I coach range from JavaScript, TypeScript, PHP, Python, Go, and a little bit of Rust. Like that's sort of I'm a polyglot, so I coach teams. I do use whatever they use. What I wouldn't mention, however, is that TDD now became this gamified, engineering friendly eval function for software engineering output that I don't think it's not fair to just simplify it to that degree, and then it created this whole craze about people wanting to learn extreme programming because because AIs derail completely when you start using them on like a way too large problem, like with way too vague expectations. But that's what humans are also exposed to. It's possible for a product owner to create a Jira ticket with just 2 sentences in there, and they expect the engineers to figure out what they want. So this process has always existed. We just like moved the moving pieces slightly, and we sort of reorganized them. What I would emphasize, however, is that the real big thing that drives high-performing teams forward is not TDD. It's the whole suite of the principles behind extreme programming, out of which TDD manifested, or out of which TDD was discovered. Right? So it was this whole idea about how does a group of human engineers interact with each other? And how do we interact with each other in a way that doesn't require obsessive division of labor, that doesn't require obsessive division of responsibilities, that doesn't require obsessive waterfall-like structures for work plans, that they can course correct and change ownership and rescope and reframe dynamically without derailing stability on production, without introducing regressions, without introducing bugs. So it was this whole idea about how can humans work together as teams grow. That is the more important aspect of extreme programming. If you're just interested in extreme programming for your juniors so they can learn how to use TDD just enough so that they can have a better eval function for their cloud code usage, and they don't like talking to their product owner or their other peers on the team, and they don't do TDD themselves, I think that's off the mark. I think you're very likely in an environment where just cutting people from your team would be a natural productivity boost. So that's a question worth exploring. It's like, are you in such an environment? Like, are you misguiding yourself into thinking that the AIs will solve all of your problems? I also have, I saw now. You need to go. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this show. I think Dennis will stay because he has not. Yeah, you have a lot to say about that.
I would like to read the article that Emmanuel posted. Now, however, I'm on my guest account, and I don't know if
you can join the normal. Just do it.
Yeah. So let me rejoin. Okay.
Quickly.
Okay.
Little bit of management. Yeah, we're using Restream for multi-streaming. That's the issue right now. That he is actually on a guest account, and that's the problem, that he is not able to see the entire management thing I see right now. And when I leave, he's probably out as well. I don't know. We'll see. I'm a little bit short of time today. On time today. That's the reason why I need to go. It was an interesting conversation. So generative AI is booming a lot. What do you think about generative UI, like tools, MCP, UI, these Copilot kit? It's a good question. I haven't really used these kind of tools, to be honest, that much. When I do UI, we have a basic UI system, right? A design system, which we've developed for ourselves, that is very well documented for the AI, so the AI can understand it. And in everything we do, that is part of the general context. So the AI does know about that and recreates or use the components anyway we would use. in a way which is supposed to be used like that, and that works very well, better with GPT than Claude. But if you know how to handle this, you can actually do it quite well. So that is my opinion on that. I really need to go. Thanks for the comments. Thank you, Dennis. Just keep on cracking. Have a good time, everyone. I leave now. Goodbye.
Ciao, Adrian.
Where's the leave button?
It's not the, not that one. Good. So I think Adrian just answered your question. I personally don't use generative UI tools a lot. I don't really work in environments where we'd have a use case for them. However, we did use generative UI in the terminal sense, right? So having terminal UIs be generated, usually some form of command line tools or interactive shells that we use to prototype, like a headless system, or we then plug it into something like Playwright, or I think Paul Hammond has also been working on a similar project. Generally, the MCP-related questions that we ask our systems are domain specific. It's like, where is this? What is this thing that the user uses implemented? And did we forget to remove any feature flags? Just MCP level questions of an entire code base that we did use, but I think that's quite primitive or like simplistic AI usage. I wouldn't really treat that as like a dominant workflow. What I did notice a lot is that lately CEOs or like C-levels of different kinds are coming to me for advice, where they do this thing where their engineering team is stuck, so they get a little bit impatient, right? So the engineering team is stuck, the product people get a little bit impatient, a few non-engineers sit down together and they start vibe coding a prototype, and then they have this weird conversation with their engineers of, hey, why are you guys so stuck? Look, we managed to vibe code this in 2 afternoons. Why are you looking at us like that? What's wrong? Why won't you accept this? Like, you wouldn't believe how many times I've had this conversation in the past 4 weeks, where a CEO comes to me and is like, hey, my team is super against AI tools, and I'm like, no, no, they're not. They're not against AI tools. I tell them they're against you not trusting them, because they're the engineering expert, and they don't like you being impatient and building something without them behind their backs, and then telling them, hey, I built this, can you maintain it, please? Because that is exactly the hell that they're trying to avoid by being conservative with their AI usage, right? There's a lot of that happening, and I'm aware that there's a natural appetite for it, but the short term, like the long term pain, just I don't see it. I don't see the benefits of it. And if you've been watching I said in our work, vibe coding is encouraged. Yeah, of course, vibe coding is encouraged, like for prototyping, for learning how to tool as like a exercise. I see no problem with it, but like, don't use it as as a leverage or like a blackmail tool for judging or blaming your engineering teams for not working at the pace that you can vibe code something that is incredibly unstable. Coming from that perspective, also from the aspect of, so I mean, having quite a few conversations lately regarding testing and how to encourage teams to test more while they're doing while they're using various different forms of AI tools. And this question comes up of, hey, are we testing just to use it as an eval for the AI, or are we testing because we are now suddenly serious about testing, right? I see a lot of teams go into testing because they've been told by YouTubers that TDD is great for AI, but they don't naturally test. They don't naturally write tests in a way that would be like continuous integration compliant. Like, because the point is that like for me, the litmus test for good testing is that I can start working on something and I can write down my intention of what I want the code to do with the tests without actually fully implementing it. And then if I suddenly have to go pick up my kids from daycare because one of them has a fever, you can then pick up where I left off and you can check how far I got and you can finish it without needing a meeting with me. And then tomorrow we can debrief, and we don't have this conversation of you started working on something else because you weren't sure where I left off, but instead we review what you did in my absence and we continue the work, right? Like, to me, the litmus test for TDD is I can hit commit and be unfinished, and you can immediately pick it up and not have to ask for permission or my buy-in. You can just see, oh, Dennis is this far along. He said that we also need to do this and this. I see he stopped under red, which he skipped out. I'm just going to pick up on there and I'll help him make progress on that because I have like 20 minutes, right? It's a very good example of asynchronous work. And to me, that is the highest bar for like what healthy and candid and respectful conversation between coworkers would look like. What I don't like is this whole idea of you, the human, don't need tests, but the AI is stupid. For the AI, you need to use TDD. And to me, that's just, it's bittersweet in a way, because I love the encouragement of people using XP AIs now to learn XP, to learn TDD, to get back into actual, modern software engineering, like sensible, like productive software engineering. But I've seen this go wrong in the past with things like Agile, for example, where Agile was this thing of stop managing us. We probably need a unique process. We need to figure out what unique process works for us, right? So if I'm at Acme Corp, I need to figure out what kind of engineering process is Acme Corp DNA. And there's some principles that we can rely on, but other than that, we can just figure it out. And as long as we stay curious, we will figure out a really good process. That's Agile. Instead, what people really bought into in the whole Agile era in the early 2000s was just tell me what to do and give me a process that I can uniformly apply across all industries. And we got like FOB, Scrum, something, like certification agencies and project managers jumped on that so they could think that, oh, project management for software is now a solved problem. I just need to do these 7 certifications and do Scrum or Agile or Kanban or something like that, or Scrum Fall, and have these processes and have these kinds of diagrams and have these kinds of burn down charts and buy 𝘱cie and 𝘱𝗵𝗿 and the expensive enterprise grade Jira license, and everything will be good. And we will build a successful product and a successful product engineering team. And that didn't happen. And a whole bunch of people got really upset with what happened to Agile, and Scrum Masters got like a really bad rap, and there's this like weird project theater going on, project management theater, or like having weird roles inside the organization to facilitate nothing much really, just like running meetings and grooming Jira backlogs and whatnot. This can very quickly backfire. And I'm trying to be really excited about AI. I'm an early adopter. I use GPT-2. I use GPT-1. I was all over it. I also learned from Andrew Ng about machine learning. Like, I was in the first cohort of the course that then became Coursera. I was all over it in my youth, right? But I very quickly saw what it can do and what it cannot do, and that humans struggling to work together effectively and just building relationships with others in your organizations, that will continue to be a problem. That will continue to be a challenge, a difficult, ongoing theater, like not theater in a negative sense, but it's an ongoing stage where you have to show up and learn your part and learn your lines and learn your role, and you'll have to build chemistry with your team members. And I'm always skeptical of tools that essentially promise a hyper-productive individual, right? So, for example, with Copilot usage, when Copilot came out and Copilot X when it came out, my first question was, how does an ensemble use this? Like, how does a group of people pair programming use this? can we have a microphone and can it listen to us and can it just give us suggestions as we talk to each other? Can we do that? Because that would be the most natural interface, right? But what I'm seeing is people then use either Claude Code and then you have a conversation and then you type something and you hit enter and then you kind of do nothing at all and you talk about something completely different. Or people are using the inline helpers, the shadow text, and then just reading, like they type and then they stop and then they read what the AI is suggesting, and then it's like, no, that's not that, and they keep typing, and they don't notice how disruptive that is for just human collaboration. Xiam said, I don't know how I can start with TDD. Like I directly wanted to jump into functionality. We start with TDD by just starting with TDD. Like you need to understand. I always say start with the question of how does my user notice that I have implemented the feature, and then work backwards from that. And if you don't like the answer, then there's definitely a design problem somewhere in your system, and then that's the lesson. And you probably need multiple people to solve this problem. So you will probably have this problem no matter what. It just really brings all of these problems into the present in a way that you can then act on them if you wish. If you take them seriously, the design, the tech debt, the architecture issues, if you take them seriously immediately rather than doing these like long form meetings, then that is a very good litmus test for what else might be going on in your company that might be missed, right? So TDD doesn't really solve a lot of your problems. How I use pairing and TDD, as I usually say, just start pairing and do TDD and answer the question I just asked you. And it'll immediately service everything that's wrong with your legacy system or your architecture or with your way of working or with your review process. It's a very good leveler. Like it really grounds the team in reality where it's like, no, I don't want to build this in isolation on a feature branch and talk to Claude for 2 days. I want to build it in such a way that I can have a test tell me that the user will be happy with it. And if we don't know how to write that, well, we probably don't know how to write a feature either, and we're just fishing around in the darkness. Okay, but I promised to read. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself, Xiam. This is a very nice conversation, but I'm sensing that I can very easily go down a rabbit hole and sort of as my passion. So let's read what Emmanuel shared a while ago. So Emmanuel shared this post. So he said, "Stop collaborating." This is a post from a post-hog newsletter called "Collaboration Sucks." The link is "Collaboration Sucks," and the title is "Stop Collaborating." Humans were not supposed to synergize or give feedback. Collaboration erodes motivation and effectiveness. Feeling obligated to help or discuss, simply say no, be the driver, ship stuff yourself instead. I need to check, is this satire or... Okay. If collaboration sucks, why do people do it? Everyone is to blame. People want to be helpful. On the flip side, people don't ask for feedback. People aren't specific enough about the feedback they need. When somebody has a good idea, response often defaults to let's discuss. Yeah, I also hate discussing stuff for no reason. People just want to talk about stuff because they're too busy. It's not clear who the owner is. It's annoying. So I think how to crush collaboration, go faster. Pull request issues, Slack messages. Every time you say collaboration happening, speak up and destroy it. I don't know. I think this is trying to be polarizing and edgy for the sake of producing views. Charles Cook. I would have to look at some. Maybe this is his style of writing, right? So maybe he's maybe it's rage bait. Like I can see a valuable message being there, right? So I can agree, just quickly skimming the article, I can agree on this idea that shipping stuff alone is preferable to bad collaboration, right? So if you, for example, if you don't have agreement or consensus about what it is you want to build, and everything has to be split down into an individual form of work, then what you're taking off of the table is for your top priority to be finished better or with more iterations where you can explore more ideas, or just faster or sooner on the calendar. Usually what people care about is sooner on the calendar, not speed per se, right? Like not lines of code, but like sooner on the timeline. So if your base assumption is that all collaboration is bad and all collaboration is dysfunctional, then by default you will have to multitask, right? But by default you have to become a feature factory where all product needs, product wants have to be split down into engineering work in a way that they can be individually assigned and split up into work tasks that are dependency free. And then the dependencies that cannot be removed are then handled with like pull request, pull code review theater, with sprint demos, etc. It's not a bad way of working, but it is a way of working that's really sort of, it's very disconnecting. Like most people in such an organization will not be working on the top mission of the company, right? So only very few people will accidentally end up on the ticket that the company cares the most about, which means that there's going to be a lot of slack work. That there's going to be a lot of kind of work that is extremely efficient, but not effective, like financially unnoticeable for the organization. And this is just from my experience, right? It's if you have a team of 3 people, how you can work is you can have one person work on priority number 1, and the other 2 can figure out what else they can work on to not bother this person. That's usually the default in most companies. Sometimes you put 2 people on it, and then the more mobbing oriented, ensemble oriented, pair programming oriented teams are saying, like, what is the most amount of people we can put on this? So even if they're not productive, at least they're seeing it be built, so they will be able to monitor it, debug it. They will be able to like contribute to architecture decisions, or maybe the leader can leave and they can take over. As long as they're present with building it, as long as it's our top priority, right? I wouldn't ask you to treat your, I don't know, the 15th priority in the backlog. I wouldn't expect you to throw money at the problem like this. But for your top priority, for your most important initiative this week, and if this initiative doesn't change over the course of a quarter, like if it is, a key objective, and those key objectives can be split up into, smaller chunks, then I see no reason why a group of people wouldn't just, choose to be inefficient individually in order to be more effective as a team, right? So for the team to produce more net outcomes at the cost of per human labor being less time efficient, time per output efficient, if you end up in more absolute output, right? So I would rather have one large team rather have a large plane that burns fuel inefficiently than 10 very eco-friendly cars to cross the Atlantic, right? I would prefer the plane. Like I would rather throw money at the problem and have a fuel inefficient device that is effective, rather than ignore effect, right? Ignore efficacy and just focus on fuel efficiency über alles, right? And I see this, not to get political, but I see this with various DEI initiatives, eco initiatives, CO2 emission initiatives, where sometimes we just try to hyper individuate efficiency for efficiency's sake, and forgetting that ultimately these companies, these organizations that are building software, some of them are agencies, some of them are big enterprises, some of them are product companies. And ultimately, for most people, what you want is make an impact, to have effect, to really move the needle. And very few organizations are so large that it is worth to them to obsess about every single point of efficiency. For example, if a meeting can be very effective, as in I can communicate simply something very important to 10 people, I would rather call a 15-minute meeting for 10 people rather than scheduling 15 individual one-on-one meetings that last a third of the time, 5 minutes, right? Like I would rather just throw money at the problem by making it a little bit more inefficient just to get it across, so that nobody feels left out. Nobody has this idea of, oh, this week you're working on priority number 1 and I'm working on priority number 3. Only one person can work on the top priority. I can only contribute by reviewing your code, and you're using Cloud Code differently than I do. And that's a feature factory, right? So this hyper focus on individual efficiency, I'm always skeptical of tools that divide the team rather than bring them together. If you're looking for tools that are AI adjacent that bring the team together, look at tools like GatherTown and Pair With Me from the IntelliJ stack, from Visual Studio. What is it? Code sharing. There's a plugin mode in VS Code that allows you to pair program effectively. Tuple, tuple, I believe it's pronounced. Just pair programming tools, and some of them integrate very well with AIs, with Juni, with Cloud Code. I think that's a very good head start for how to get that into a team. And then just like my observation would be, Cloud Code usage or no, AI usage or no, if you're interested in making a huge impact on your team, now that there's this AI hype going on, convince your team, get on the bandwagon and tell them, hey, extreme programming seems to be working well for AI. If we want to be AI adjacent, let's also teach our team extreme programming. And then if the AI bubble bursts and doesn't pan out, at least you will have taught your team extreme programming. But do it for extreme programming's sake, and use the AI as an excuse to get it, and see what happens. And focus on the principles, not just the techniques. The principles are there for a reason. Okay. Hope that was fun for you. It's definitely fun for me. It's these kind of discussions that Adrian and I deal with when we're coaching and mentoring, and in our organizations also. There's no shortage of collaboration or AI and collaboration related topics to discuss and optimize and problems to solve. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for deciding to spend your evening with us. I see we had like 20 people on my Substack, at least, quite a few people on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to just DM us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on our tech journey. I will be having another conversation like this with Alex Jukes on Friday at noon London time, 11 a.m. Vienna, Berlin time. If you want to watch, we will have a slightly different perspective. We'll be focusing more on the smaller, very small organization side, startups, companies that use agencies that use augmented, temporary workforces, consultants, contractors, and how their AI usage is affecting teams. If you're interested in that, I think Alex has already scheduled the event on Engineering Harmony. So Alex Jukes Engineering Harmony on Substack, and I'll be posting the announcement tomorrow. So you can just follow me on LinkedIn, you can check out my page, and I'm sure you'll get it. Leave a like, please. Subscribe to your favorite channel. Say a hello, say a goodbye if you're still here live with us. It's been a pleasure.